Always love the excitement of some great music, getting things launched and ready to go. It makes me want to go like this, right? Because it reminds me of kind of a casino and playing blackjack, which of course one of my favorite stories ever is Fred Smith, the founder and CEO of FedEx. You guys, I'm sure have heard of him before. I know you're probably wondering right now, Matt, what does that have to do with recruiting and retention and per agent productivity? I promise we're going to get to that. We're going to dig into all of that. But before we do that, what I'd like for you to do, don't be shy about this. Go into the chat. If you would, put your name in the chat. Also put what city you're in in the chat. And then I'd also like for you, whatever you're called, in South Carolina, as an example, they're called brokers in charge. In Georgia and Florida, they're called qualifying brokers. In a lot of other states, they're called provisional or qualifying brokers. So if you would just kind of put your first name in there, put your where you're at, and also what you're called, because vocabulary matters. We're going to talk a lot more about that in just a second. But I know you were thinking the same thing. Probably a lot of other people were thinking, what does blackjack have to do with with recruiting? So a favorite story of mine is about Fred Smith. And so, he was in college, wrote a paper about how the idea of FedEx would be a great thing that would work for a lot of people. And as he was doing that, he got a C on the paper because it was incomplete. It wasn't fully thought out. And it not being fully thought out was part of the problem that he ran into. He got some original, he had some original financing and everything. And in that original financing, they got to the point where they were spending about $1 million in the early 70s, $1 million a month in fuel costs. And so they were at the verge of bankruptcy. He had about $5,000 left in his account. So what does he do? He goes to the other investors, everybody else, tries to raise some more funds. That didn't happen. So he does what every great CEO would do, right? He takes that $5,000 and goes to Las Vegas and plays blackjack and gambles it all, puts it all on the line, comes back on Monday, has about $32,000, which was enough to float them through some of their costs until some provisional financing that they had was able to get them where they wanted to go, because of course their guarantee was when you absolutely positively have to have it there overnight, right? So what he did was he kind of put it all on the line and risked it and put a lot of effort into getting things across the finish line. And that's why when I hear that great music and I see somebody going like this, or I see the thumbs up, it reminds me of that of the blackjack dealer saying, "Hey, I'm done for right now, but somebody else is coming along to take care of you." And of course, that reminds me of Fred Smith. So the big picture here is we're going to talk about recruiting today. We're going to talk a lot about recruiting. We're going to dig into it. So one of the key things that we want to make sure that we keep in mind about recruiting is when we're talking to people, sometimes we get wrapped up in whether they're right now or whether they're future additions to our office. Okay, and we're gonna dig into that. We're gonna dig into that just a little bit. So we're also going to make sure that we're going to dig into some things like objection handlers. Okay. Now, whenever we talk about objection handlers, right? Thinking of Fred Smith and not giving up. Whenever I was really first charged to focus on recruiting and kind of push my office and my region to the next level as a regional manager, I was non-competing. Let me make sure that I'm clear about this part. Most of my real estate career, I was a non-competing managing or regional manager. And so what that meant was that my production was not going to be tied into whether an office was profitable or not. Okay. So I didn't have the benefit of that. So from a big picture standpoint, either I made my offices profitable or I got fired. That's just the way that it worked. And so when I first heard the story about Fred Smith a really long time ago, him not giving up and him not quitting and him finding a way no matter what happened is what kind of led me to start tracking the objections that I was getting whenever I was recruiting. So what I did is when I started reaching out to people and calling and connecting and all the different ways and tactics that I was meeting people, I started keeping track of all the no's that I got, right? The yeses were easy to file away, but the no's were the ones that were perplexing to me that I didn't want to give up on. So what I did is I started tracking all of those. And today we're going to talk about one of those, and you guys as managing brokers, you know this, right? When your salespeople talk about objections, there's not a whole lot of objections in sales. When they sit down with a seller, there's, really a set group. Now there's a lot of different ways of saying it, but there's a set group of objections that people actually have, right? And so the same thing is true when it comes to recruiting. And so what I found was that although people were saying it a lot of different ways, it really boiled down to there being about 10 or 11 different objections that I kept running into. And so what we're going to do is we're going to tackle today two pieces. We're going to tackle one, whenever someone says, I'm happy where I'm at, okay, because I ran into a lot of people that said that. I ran into a lot of real estate agents that were coached by their broker to say, I'm happy where I'm at, so that it kind of turned the other broker off quickly, which kudos to them for working on retention with their agents. But as I got that more and more often, I realized that whenever it boiled right down to having those objections, if I had a systematic way of understanding an important thing, which we'll talk about in just a second, a systematic way of understanding that, and then I had a very calm way, a non-defensive way of approaching that objection that they had, I was more likely to get past that first initial obstacle, which was trust. And that really was the first step that I needed to get across. And all the objections that I kept track of, I knew that it boiled down to they needed to trust me more before they were actually going to decide to work with me. So here's what we're gonna do. I'm gonna put something in the chat in just a second, and it's a QR code that you can take a picture of. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna share it with you so that you can click on it while we're going through the presentation if you want. And what it's talking about is the difference between an objection, which is very important, which we're gonna spend time on, and a condition, because those are two completely different things. So let me give you an example of that, right? Let's say that you reach out to someone and you ask them to join your office, and they say, no, I really like to work from home. You don't dig into it, and that's the complete answer that you get from them. You're put off by it. You've been rejected again. You hang up the phone. You move on with your day, right? Let's say that you dig into that a little bit more. That at that point is just an objection. Now, an example of a condition would be is if you call them and you talk to them and they say, yeah, I have to work from home. I actually care for one of my parents who's bedridden, so I have to be at home most of my day. That's two completely different situations. That's two completely different scenarios. One of those is an objection, and one of those is a condition, and it's your job to get to the bottom of which of the two those are. So we'll put something in the chat so that you'll be able to, so that you can go back and dig into that and learn a little bit more if you want to learn a little bit more about it. Okay. So the key thing to keep in mind here is that, an objection is something that you can overcome. Okay. It's something that you can get past, right? A condition is something that is not something you're going to get past. It's something you're going to work with them on. Okay. So there's a little bit of a difference between the two. What we're going to focus on today, today's objective is we're going to, of course, we're going to talk about recruiting, but the things that we talk about are also going to improve your retention. They're also going to improve your per agent productivity, because growth-minded brokers, that's what we want, is we want them to be able to have tools and arrows in their quiver, tools in their toolbox to be able to get predictable and actually really consistent results. That's what we want to make sure that we focus on today. So we're going to dig into that just a little bit and make sure that we help you out with those things, and we're going to be really super tactical about that as well. Okay. So today, what you're going to get out of this, we're going to make sure that you get tactics that you're going to be able to use. Okay. We appreciate you spending an hour with us, and we promise that we're going to make the time full of a lot of information that's going to help you out. And like I said, some of those things are going to be tactics. Some are going to be action steps. There's going to be things that you can do immediately in your recruiting appointments or immediately in your coaching that's going to be able to help retention and per person productivity, or also improve your recruiting. There are also some of this is just going to work on your mindset a little bit. Now, this is the big thing that we focus on. We know that not every manager wants to recruit the same way. The key thing for us is helping you identify a way that's going to allow you to be able to recruit in a method and a system that allows you to succeed at the level that you want to succeed at. From a big picture standpoint, that's what we're trying to accomplish. We're trying to help you find a methodology that works best for you. One of the things that's going to help you cross that, help you cross that gap or cross that chasm is your vocabulary. And we're going to talk a lot about vocabulary. We're going to talk a lot about vocabulary today, because how you say something is important as what you say. You have to make sure that you're taking a very close look at how you're approaching and addressing your conversations with people to be more effective with less words and get better results for them, because ultimately that's what's going to make sure that they stay with your office and continue giving you those legacy profits. So so this is us, right? So this is Dr. Ben and Matt Vi, right? Notice that Dr. Ben's called the ambassador of flow. And we call him the ambassador of flow because he makes sure things are moving. If I could spin all the cameras around right now and all the 98 things that are going on, and lights and microphones and pictures and all that kind of stuff, there is Dr. Ben all behind all of that, making sure it's going the way that it's supposed to. First and foremost, if you guys are listeners of the podcast, we can't tell you how much we appreciate that. Thank you very much from the bottom of our heart. The podcast is in part what allows us to make sure that we can bring free live webinars with a ton of valuable content like this to you. So we love you. We love you tuning into that. So like I said, Dr. Ben's the doctor of flow. He's a real doctor. He's not a fake doctor. He's one of those real guys that really knows what he's doing. But he got into the real estate business, and then he got into the digital media space. And then I was fortunate enough to be able to work with him to be able to help you guys recruit at a whole new level. And of course, if you listen to the podcast, you know I'm Matt Vi. Dr. Ben calls me the big guy. Not sure why. Maybe one day we'll discuss that on the podcast. We'll get to the bottom of all of that. We're happy you're here. We're super grateful you're here. We're going to make sure that we make the most of all of our time. Okay. So what are we gonna go over today? Okay. What are we actually going to focus on? So the agenda for today, we're going to make sure that we're paying attention to, we're going to work through, like I said, there's going to be actionable pieces. We're going to work through on how you can help get your agents to help you start recruiting without you having to pay them. Now, if you connected with us through the podcast, or if you downloaded, some of the things from our site, or if you reached out to us for discovery calls, anything along that line, you got information from us about who we are and what we do. And one of the big things that we talk about on a regular basis is making sure that your agents are authentically connected with your brokerage. If they are, it makes it real easy for them to be excited about helping you bring in new talent. We're going to dig into that a little bit more today. The other thing we're going to make sure that we spend time on is we're going to make sure that we really lean into, as much as possible, that the fact that you need to attract people over the next 12 months. Okay. And so why I say that is because during a shifting market, right? Some of you guys are feeling it more than other guys. We got people from, across the country in the webinar. We've got registered from all over the place. So we know that it's shifting at a different pace in different places. So over the next 12 months, there's going to be uncertainty in the market. When there's uncertainty in the market, you have to be certain. That's the bottom line. When you talk to recruits, you have to be certain. When there's uncertainty in the market, you have to be certain how to get listings. When there's uncertainty in the market, you have to be certain how to deal with buyers. You have to be certain on how you train people. You have to be certain on your culture. The more uncertainty there is and the more stable you are, the better off you're going to do from a retention, recruiting, and per agent productivity standpoint. So we're going to make sure that we dig into that. And then we're also going to make sure, like I mentioned, we're going to talk about a couple of, we're going to talk about how to handle objections, but we're going to dig specifically in to one objection. And that one objection is, I'm happy where I'm at, right? Because we get that a lot of times. Like I said, a lot of people are coached to be able to ward off recruiting efforts by doing that. I'm going to give you real life examples as many times as I possibly can. When it comes to I'm being happy, or I'm happy where I'm at, I connected with an agent that I knew would be a good fit for my office. Okay. And I reached out to him and I stumbled across some information that helped me have a conversation with him the right way. I'd love to say that I did this completely on purpose, but I didn't. It just didn't work out that way. I happened to be reading some great information from a great author. We'll talk about that more in just a few minutes. And when I use that in the conversation, when he said, I'm happy where I'm at, I leaned into a couple of questions with him, and I felt in that conversation I felt the tide shift. I could hear it in my conversation with him that the tide had shifted. And I'm going to talk to you about exactly how you can do that, whether it's I'm happy where I'm at, or whether, your office is too expensive, or I get leads where I'm at, or the leads at your office are too expensive, or you're too big, or you're too small, or I only work at franchises. I never work at franchises. All of these other conditions, I've got to talk to my business partner, all these other conditions, or all these other objections, where I'm going to help you understand how to make that transition, and how you can feel that change in the conversation with them. Okay. We'll dig into that. We'll dig into that a little bit more in just a minute. Then, of course, I want to make sure that you're asking questions. I want to make sure that if you have questions about anything, that you're reaching out and you're saying, hey, Matt, can you dig a little bit more into that? Can you spend a little bit more time on that? Or what do you mean? Or even, Matt, we'll put you on live if you want to say, Matt, you're crazy as hell. You don't know what you're talking about. This is how this actually works. Man, I'd love to have a conversation with you. So just ask Dr. Ben in the chat, and he'll make sure that we can go live. Okay. So number next is, let's talk about what type of mastermind this is. Okay. I don't want this to be looked at, we call it a webinar because it's simple and everybody understands it, because remember, vocabulary counts, but it's actually a mastermind, right? So what I'm doing is I'm sharing information that we get from the customers that are in our coaching program. I'm sharing the information that we talk about on a regular basis. We meet with them consistently and constantly and talk about what's going on in the market. And so what I'm able to do is I'm able to bring you information that I'm hearing from brokers all across the country and share it with you through this webinar format. So I want you to look at this as a mastermind, which also means that if you have questions, if you have input, I'd love for you to share it. I'd love for you to lean into it. And again, take it off of mute and let's talk. Now, with that being said, there are some rules, okay? Because we're all realtors. So we're going to go over some rules really quickly. So first and foremost, this is a collaborative environment, not a competitive environment. Okay. So if you're going to come on live or you're going to be in the chat, I want to make sure that you understand and stay in that collaborative mindset. This isn't about talking down about someone else. It isn't talking up about you. It is about us working together to make sure that everyone involved gets the benefit of being here. It's just like humor, right? It's not funny if everybody involved isn't laughing. This is the same exact way. If everybody involved can enjoy and appreciate it, then we're not really doing a collaborative mastermind. And I want to make sure that we stay on track with that. The second thing is we've all worked very hard to get and to keep our license. So the National Association of Realtors has a code of ethics. And that means whenever we get together, there's conversations that we are not allowed to have with other people that might negatively impact the public. Okay. So make sure that if you're going to come on live, or make sure if you're going to put something in the chat, make sure we're abiding by code of ethics. That means there's duties to the public, which is the first part of code of ethics. It means it's duties to customers and clients, the second part, and it means it's duties to other agents. Let's make sure we honor those, because we all are realtors and we all want to stay realtors, I would assume, or you wouldn't be here trying to be a better one. So the third thing is this is being recorded. Okay. So we record this in part. There's no replay. Like I said, this is only a live event. That's how you really get the impact of a live webinar. Our clients will be able to, because we've got a bunch of our clients that are in the audience, they will be able to watch the replay. But as far as a public replay, we want to make sure that we get everyone engaged and ask their questions as we're actually going through it. So this is being recorded, and there is a chance that we'll take a clip from this. And whenever we take a clip from this, we'll actually put it out on social media. And that way you get to see yourself if you're asking questions, asking brilliant questions and getting those questions answered, or contributing in a brilliant way and helping other brokers from across the country. So just know, please, that we're being recorded, right? And then number 4 is, if you want to speak up, we'd love for you to speak up. We want you to speak up in the chat. Now, there's a couple of different ways you can do that. If you'd like to reach directly out to the Doctor of Flow, Dr. Ben, then you can send a message directly to him. You can also send a message directly to everyone. If you're interested in sending a message directly to everyone, if there's questions that pop up, Dr. Ben's he's gonna speak up from behind the 98 monitors that are over there, and he's gonna say, "Hey, Matt, I've got a question," and we'll talk through it. And I'd love to actually do that. And then the other thing that you can do is you can actually ask to go live if you want to go live. And of course, we would love for you to do that if you're interested in doing that. Okay. So from a big picture standpoint, You know, there's a system that we call 441. Okay. And the system of 441, you see it on your screen now. There's four business pillars. There are four recruiting stages, and there is one underlying theme of all of that that has to support everything that is in that 441 system, and everything that is in your retention system, and everything that is in your recruiting system. You have to be value first, period. No ifs, ands, or buts. You can recruit someone and offer them a bunch of stuff in order for them to come on board, but you know as well as I do, as dynamic as the real estate industry is and as dynamic as the real estate models are, things will shift. And when they do, if people come for the stuff, if they come for the commission splits, if they come for the leads, if they come for the monies, they'll leave for the same exact reason. So if you begin your conversations with a value first conversation, the way we express it on the podcast is like this. The first thing that an agent should experience is value. The first thing you'd think, saying it on the podcast all the time, I would say it the right way. Ben's back behind the camera laughing right now. The first thing that a person should receive is value. The first thing they should experience is a culture of growth. What that means is that the first thing they get from you is going to help establish some type of reciprocity. So it has to be something of value. Let me give you a very real life example here. Let's say that you had a great uncle and his name was Warren Buffett. And he called you up one day and he said, you know what? I want to help you out. I want to help all the agents in your market out. This is what I'm going to do. For every agent that you reach out to and connect with, that comes in and sits down with you, they don't have to join you, just comes in and sits down with you and talks to you about your brokerage, I'll give them $5,000. And for every one of them that does that, I'll give you $5,000 as well. How many people over the next 30 days do you think that you could get to sit down in front of you to have a conversation about your brokerage for that $5,000? I would think probably a lot, right? I would think there's probably a good chance that they would see the value easily, you would see the value easily, and everyone would know there's not a commitment, there's just a connection, and there's a huge benefit from making that connection, and they would want to come in and sit down with you. Now, let me ask you another question. Does your brokerage help an agent make more than $5,000? When an agent joins you, do you make more than $5,000? The answer to both of those should be yes. And if the answer to both of those is yes, how come if Uncle Warren isn't doing it and you're able to do it and you know you're able to do it, how come you're not getting in front of those people? The reason why is because your message is not a value first message. What you have to learn how to do is you have to make sure that everyone knows quickly and easily how much value they're going to get by being connected with you. Notice I didn't say sitting down and interviewing with you. By being connected with you, that's where that value starts. We're going to dig more into that. That's also going to help a lot with agent attraction. And as you can imagine, that would help a tremendous amount whenever it comes to retaining people. Okay. So like I said, there's a 441. We just talked about the one, which is value. Let's talk about the first four. The first four is business pillars. Now, I had the opportunity to be able to, there was some executive education for real estate industry leaders a long time ago in real estate, given at University of Pennsylvania Wharton School of Business. I was able to actually attend that because of a company that I work for. As we went through all the classes, they all had a very fundamental message about the parts of a business and how they needed to be approached. But they all agreed, and after I looked more, whether it was the book, the 10-day MBA, or whether you look through, anything from the Harvard Business Review, or if you look in stuff from Stanford, Stanford Business School, all of them agree that there's four fundamental pieces to the real estate business, and not just to the real estate business, but any business in general. There's sales, there's marketing, there's finance, and then there is compliance, or what would be called operations in every company. Okay. So if you started to have that conversation with an agent and you said, hey, look, I really want to help you out with your business. I love it that you're trying to treat your business like a business. Sales, marketing, finance, and compliance. By the time you got to compliance, they would be asleep. They would be completely disconnected. And we've already kind of touched on the reason why, because vocabulary matters. So whenever we talk to people, what we have to do is we have to have a conversation with them in a language that is easy for them to understand and comprehend. Think about going somewhere to a country that you don't speak the language. What do you automatically do whenever you're trying to get your point across? You try to use simple, basic words. You try to conjugate them simply. You try to make sure that you point at things so that people get a reference, a frame of reference with not just hearing it, but with sight. You do all the things that you need to do to make sure that your message comes across as clearly as possible. But then as soon as we get back to doing something like recruiting, that is extremely important, or coaching our agents, which is extremely important, we start picking up the pace in the conversation we have, and we ignore the basic vocabulary that gets our point across. So what we do instead of saying sales, marketing, finance, and compliance or operations, what we say instead is we say leads, cost, revenue, expenses, training or development, depending on the phase that the agent is in their business, and culture. Those things directly correlate to all the pieces of their business. Now, if you sit back in your chair and you think about it for just a second, everything in real estate falls under one of those categories. Most things in real estate fall under several of those categories. But if you learn to have your conversations in those pillars, if you learn to have your conversations in those different pieces or sectors or components of the business, at the end of your conversation with the agents that you're talking to, it's going to be a very complete conversation. You're going to be able to have gotten your message across to them in a way that allows them to be able to accept the fact that you know what you're talking about. And at the same time, it's going to help them understand where they are in their business, and it's going to help them grow their business. Now, a tool that we use all the time is diamond mapping to make sure that we get through to this, to focus on it the way that we're supposed to. And if you haven't ever, done any diamond mapping, this would be a great exercise this would absolutely be a great exercise to do for sure. So, but that's the first four. And of course, value is the one. Now let's talk about the second four. The second four is really what we're focusing on today, because we're going to talk about appointments, which is the first of those four pieces. And the four pieces are the stages of your recruiting process or your recruiting system. Now there's four, like I said, there's four stages to it. Stage one is appointments. Stage two is interviews. Stage three is onboarding. And stage three is follow-up, and stage four is onboarding. So stage one, look at stage one and stage two, appointment and interview. So whenever we talk about appointment, so anybody can make the appointment let's say it's a reservation in a restaurant. So somebody can call a restaurant up for you, and somebody can say, yes, Matt is going to be there, party of 12. He's going to be there at 2:00. And, they're going to enjoy, the time at the restaurant. They're looking forward to it. They set the appointment, they send the information to Matt, and now Matt can get into the restaurant and sit down. Then the interview happens. The interview is you actually eating the dinner. So what we have to make sure we're doing whenever we're recruiting is that we have the right people in the right roles throughout our entire process. A lot of times what we run into is we run into a great person that might be excited or motivated about recruiting, but they're sitting in the wrong seat. And so the next seat, speaking of sitting in the next seat, is the post-interview follow-up, like you said just a second ago. The post-interview follow-up is broken down into two pieces. There's general and there's specific. We'll talk about that on another master recruiting series. But there has to be follow-up that is consistent throughout to make sure that it takes you to the next phase properly, which is onboarding. And the onboarding phase is when all the promises that were made, and when all the culture that was exposed, and when all the conversations that were had about what was being promised, all of that stuff is being delivered on, or timelines being established of exactly when that's going to be delivered on. A mistake a lot of brokers make is they think that onboarding is actually paperwork. That's the worst thing that you can do in your onboarding, is make it all about the paperwork, because what you're telling your agent at that point is the entire time through the recruiting process, this is about you and the development of your business, and this is about us having a relationship together, and this is about us having, us growing together and doing better with our business together. By the way, fill out all of this paperwork, and I'll see you next Thursday at your first training. That happens way too often. We have to make sure we stop doing that if we want to have a culture of growth within our office. So the next thing that we're going to talk about here for just a minute is what I mentioned, was the number one of the second four, right? So 441, the first one is the business pillars. The second four is the stages of recruiting. Okay. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to dig in today to the appointment process just a little bit. Okay. So Whenever we talk about setting the appointment, first thing I'm going to say is who cares, right? And whenever I say that, what I mean by that is, does the person that's setting the appointment truly care about the relationship and conversation between that person and you, or are they just trying to get someone to sit down in front of you? So if we're making sure that the people that are making those initial connections with us, whatever those outbound connections are, sometimes those outbound connections are you bumping into them at some type of open house somewhere. Or maybe sometimes that conversation is you just doing a cold outreach. Or maybe sometimes that conversation is a co-op transaction, or they're part of a book club, or you've learned how to use yard signs to do recruiting. Or maybe you've used some type of event or challenge to be able to help you recruit. As we put those things into place, the person that's helping us make those initial connections, that initial appointment part of what they do, we have to make sure that that person cares about that value first principle. Because if they don't, what's going to happen is they're going to start everything off on the wrong foot. Let me paint a picture for you for just a second here. Let's say that the person that's setting the initial appointment with you reaches out and they talk to somebody and they talk to Dr. Ben, and whenever they talk to Dr. Ben, they say, well, Dr. Ben, Matt's he's excited to meet with you. We know that you've come to a couple of the classes online that we've offered. We know that you also got some information from us about whatever it is, some type of lead magnet. And so Dr. Ben's or Matt's super excited to sit down with you. And, a couple of things he's going to go over. He's going to make sure that he really goes over how leads work here. He's also going to make sure that he talks about cost, revenue, expenses, because there's a difference between all of those. He's also going to make sure that whenever he has a conversation with you about who it is that you want to be in your business, he's going to talk about training and development, because training and development are different. And then he's going to make sure that collectively all of those things together help you understand what type of culture we have in the office. Now, if someone on the phone cares, if someone that's setting that appointment cares, or if it's you that's doing that and you say, when we sit down, we're going to talk about these things. When you say that, that is more engaging, and your fall through rates, meaning your missed appointments, is going to drop considerably. Right now, a lot of brokers that we talk to, especially whenever we first start talking to them, they're at about a 45% no-show rate on their appointments. Okay. Now I'd love for it to be less than that. And those are people that are doing a decent amount of appointments. Okay. So 45% seems like a super high number, right? Well, part of the reason why is because if the message is not clear in your initial conversations with them about what to expect when you sit down, they are nervous to show up. So the first thing that you have to do to make sure that you're attracting those type of agents you want from an appointment standpoint, you have to make sure that you have clear messaging to get the information across to them so that they know what to expect. So they're not anxious about the meeting, they're excited about the meeting instead. So having clear messaging is absolutely a big part of it. So the next thing you got to keep in mind is they want to make sure that they know that they are the boss of their business, and they want to make sure that you know that they're the boss of their business. No one goes through all the effort in real estate to get their real estate license and to get themselves trained and to start spending all that money and to start doing all those things just to turn around and be an employee. That's not what they do. That's not what they want. You have to make sure that you're helping them understand that you're going to make sure that you're their actual boss. And part of the way that you do that is by helping them understand the type of compensation that they're going to get from you in your conversations with them. What I mean by that is if whenever you're having a connection with people, there's two different types of compensations that you can offer them. The first type of compensation you can offer them is financial compensation. You can have a conversation with them about, hey, if you do this, then this is what's going to happen with your business. And you're going to make more money, right? We all know that whenever it comes to an agent making more money off of a real estate transaction and the commission on a real estate transaction, there's three different ways that they can do that, right? Only one of them is their commission plan. There's two other ways that are equally as important, and you have to make sure that they know that you're an expert in all of those ways. When you can do that, you can help them understand that they're the boss of their business and how much money they're going to make. So if you start off with clear messaging, and then you talk about the compensation from a financial standpoint, but then you also talk about compensation from an emotional standpoint. You're going to help them understand how you're different than every other broker that they talk about. So what is emotional compensation? Emotional compensation most likely is some type of recognition. Now, a lot of brokers that are really good at recruiting already have an easy time of this. A lot of brokers that are really good at retaining already have a pretty easy time of this. They like to give recognition for the behaviors that are helping people achieve at a different level. I think that's absolutely awesome. As soon as they start recruiting, though, they struggle. As soon as they start recruiting, they forget how important this emotional compensation is, and they start getting tied up in the financial compensation, because when an objection comes up, or whenever their beliefs get injected into the conversation and they think that it's just all about money, then they quit giving the type of compensation that allows a lot of agents to move. So 1 out of 5. So we all know in the real estate industry, the turnover rate of agents is about 25%. We had somebody on a webinar today that gave a really interesting stat that the average of brokers across the United States lose 20% of their production through attrition every year. 20%. They lose about 25% of their agents, almost a fourth of their agents. That's an industry stat. You can get it from a bunch of different places. So what that means is some of those people are not productive and they're leaving, and then some of those people are productive and they're going somewhere else. So we lose a portion of those people. So why do we lose them? So Harvard Business Review put out a really cool article, a blog post about why people left their companies. 1 out of 5 people said that there was toxic people in the environment that caused them to leave. 1 out of 5. Now, if you do the math, of course, that's 20%. So what that's basically saying is that one fifth of the people that are in that leave a brokerage or a company in general, they're leaving in part because there's someone toxic in that environment. That doesn't always have to be the leadership. Please keep that in mind. And toxic doesn't necessarily mean that everybody in the office is a bad person. What it means is that maybe one person is. Sometimes it means that the people don't match. Maybe they're the toxic person and they needed to go and you had to dehire them. And we love it whenever that happens. When you're giving those different types of compensation to people, like emotional compensation, being recognizing them, financial compensation, making sure you're incentivizing them to go to that next level, and you're doing both of those types of compensation, you are less likely to end up with those toxic people feeling comfortable and thriving in that environment. When the environment is just about money, you're more likely to breed the type of compensation that turns into the one that runs people off. So if you recruit from a standpoint of offering both of those, and you focus on retaining from a standpoint of those, you're going to end up with a better environment, and maybe you can beat that 1/5 and 25% rule, and that would make a huge, absolutely huge win for your bottom line. And then, of course, we touched on that. We touched on this just a second ago, and let's dig into it a little bit more. But they don't want a boss. They want somebody that is going to help them understand and achieve at a different level in their business. They want a guide. They want to be the hero of their story. So we have to make sure that we're truly paying attention to what's going on in their business. We're truly helping them with their business. We're truly helping them understand how to take that next step. But then we're letting them take that step. That's going to increase their per person productivity. That's going to help them grow as an individual. And as they grow as an individual, which we'll talk about in just a second, that also helps attract other people to your brokerage. So let's dig into it. Let's dig into the objection handler for just a second, because I'm going to try to do everything I can to stay on track time wise here. So as far as like I said, I'll give you a very real life example. So I reached out to somebody, was having a conversation with them. They were with a company that I'd reached out to a bunch of people in that company, and they had said, they said, I'm happy where I'm at, right? They were coached to say, I'm happy where I'm at. And I love that. Like I said, the broker is doing what they need to make sure they're fending off people trying to recruit or poach their agents. I love that. Everybody's doing what they're supposed to in that situation. In that conversation, I had just read something that I thought was really interesting. Like I said, it was a blog post that I go back to on a pretty regular basis now. There's a way of handling objections called BANT. Okay, BANT. Now, whenever I use it with BANTT. Okay, and so Ben's going to there's a graphic that we can put into the chat in just a minute, and Ben will put that in there. If we can figure out how to get the graphic into the chat, right? I think he's got it. Ben's shaking his head no. So here's what we'll do is we'll make sure that we send this out. We'll make sure that we send this out to everybody. There's 3 or 4 different things that we'll send out. Plus there's some QR codes at the end that are going to let you take some pictures of some stuff so you can download some things for free that we hope will help you out with your business. Okay. So it's something called BANT. Okay. And that stands for budget, authority, need, and time is the general accepted acronym layout whenever you're talking about sales objection handlers. So I add another T to it, like I mentioned just a second ago, and the other T is trust. Okay. So I think we all know how important trust is. I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on this, but just make sure that you're doing the things that you said that you were going to do when no one's looking. Do them when you don't think any agents are paying attention. Do that right thing, and word will get around, because agents love to talk to other agents about what's going on in the market. There's certainly a lot of opportunity to share stories about what went well and what did not go well in the real estate industry around us in our communities every day. So whenever I was talking to him, I had that article fresh in my head. Okay. And so, I said, hey, how's it going? And he says, oh, great. You're calling again or whatever. And I said, yeah, I just wanted to connect. And he said, look, Matt, I'm happy where I'm at. And BANT popped into my head. And whenever it popped into my head, I said, I understand completely. And I appreciate that. And I promise all I'm trying to do is be prepared with you from a relationship standpoint, that if you ever decide to grow your business in a way that your current brokerage can't or won't help you grow, that at least we have a conversation. And if it's okay with you, because I know you're in charge of the situation, if it's okay with you, I'm going to send you some things that I think will help, and you can apply those to your business. And then if the time ever comes, I'd love to sit down and talk. When I said that, I heard the shift in him, because his response back, he was not ready for that response back. So now I've said a couple of things earlier in the webinar that I want to bring back forward right now, because it's important too. One is I quit treating him like I had to hire him right now. So there's now or future business. A lot of recruiting, especially experienced agents, is future business. Not that some of it isn't now, but don't get so wrapped up in the desire for the now business that you throw away the future business you could have, because 6 months from now is right around the corner. So make sure that we understand that whenever we're talking to people, it's not just about whether or not we're going to hire someone today, whether they're going to agree to sit down with us today. So at that point, what I did is I isolated a few things with him. He said, yeah, that sounds fine. And I said, here's the reason why I say that. I know that you moved to that brokerage from another brokerage. And I'm sure that you had a good reason to move to the current brokerage you're at right now, because you're happy there, correct? And of course, what was his answer? His answer was, yes. Well, I told you I'm happy here. Fantastic. If the time ever comes that brokerage doesn't offer what it is that you need to grow to that next level, I just want to make sure that we have enough of a relationship so you can determine whether my brokerage would be a good fit or not. So I said the same thing, I reiterated it, but I made sure the second time I said it with clarity. Remember me saying earlier how important it was to be concise with the conversation. And he said, yeah, that sounds fine. So let's pause for just a second, and I'll tell you the results of all this. So what I did is I eliminated budget. He's getting that information for free. I was not asking for him for anything financially. I said, hey, you're in charge here. When I said it the first time to him, I said, you're in charge here. That gave him authority. He also was a team leader, and he didn't need to go check with anyone else, and I knew that. But I made sure that, as you know, if he took on the responsibility of a team leader, he does not want a boss. He wanted someone that was going to guide him. So I made sure that's how I approached the conversation with him. So I allowed him to have the authority. The third thing I did is establish he doesn't have a need to talk to me. He didn't have to talk to me. That's not something that needed to happen. But I did say, and this is the fourth T and the fourth letter and the fifth letter, which is T. I did say, when the time comes, if you decide that you want to transition and your current brokerage doesn't have what it is that you want, I want to make sure I'm there to have that conversation with you. So what I said is, I'm willing to build trust with you. I'm going to send you things of value ahead of time. I'm going to not ask anything in return. I'm going to relay things to you that I believe is going to help you with your business. And in exchange for that, all I'm asking is that when you want to do something different, at least we talk. So what I did is I leveraged time and trust with him. And the reason why is because all the other things were covered. When it comes to BANT, all the other things were in place. I said those, I those, I talked to those in a way that allowed him to retain the authority in the situation. And then all I had to do was just ask for the time and extend the trust. He said, after I said that, he said, you know what, Matt, you're right. You've been really great. I'm actually getting ready to go on vacation with my family. If it's no pressure, if it's just us talking, how about if I give you a call when I get back? Now, when he got back, did he give me a call? No. Did I call him? Yes. Whenever I called him, I said, listen, I know you were out of town. You said you'd be back on this date. You know, I gave you a few days to kind of get caught up and everything. I'm sure you're slam busy. Is now a good time for you? Or would you like for me to call you in a couple of days? Because I'm still on my trust and my timing. That's what mattered to him in that conversation. That is what broke him free from the rest of BANT, because those things were already established and out of the way. So all I had to do was focus on timing and trust. And he said, you know what, how about if you call me on Friday or Monday or whatever day it was? I said, great. I said, I got a better idea. How about if we just meet for coffee on Friday afternoon and we'll do it at 3 o'clock. That way it doesn't interfere with your weekend. He said, absolutely fantastic. Within a month and a half, he and his 10 million in production had come on board. Just under 10 million in production had come on board. As he came on board, because all the rest of the pieces of what I did from a recruiting standpoint, they were all in place. I was just struggling with him to get past that objection. And up until that point, I had treated, I'm happy where I'm at, as if it was a condition. Like it was something that couldn't be shifted or couldn't be changed. As soon as I realized it could be changed, and as soon as I isolated the part of it that was really the issue to him, and as soon as I built the trust with him, he was willing to sit down and talk with me. And so we'll talk a little bit more about that in just a second. But we want to try to stay on track here, right? So you know, whenever it comes to attracting agents and making sure that you find the right agents and get them to be engaged with you. So there's a couple of key things that we have to keep in mind. Let's go back to the who cares, right? Do your current agents care whether you have the right agents in place or not? Absolutely they do. Do the agents in the market care that your brokerage fits what they're trying to accomplish with their business? Of course they do. So what you have to do is you have to make sure, if you want to attract certain agents, if you want to bring them in, if you want to draw those certain agents in, you have to make sure that you're creating a message that speaks to what it is that they're trying to accomplish in their business. Now, I don't mean run around to every different agent and find out what matters in their business and then try to tailor all of your marketing message to all of them. That's not what I'm saying. Let's go back to our 441. Remember, there are 4 fundamental business pillars. Every agent cares about leads, cost, revenue, expenses, training and development, and culture. They all care about those parts of their business. And because they do, cater and shape your conversations, your marketing message, and the information you put out around those things. Now, you need to make sure that you're creating the message, but the content of the message is a different story. The content of the message should actually be from agents in your office. Let's say that there's 4 weeks in a month, and week 1, you're going to talk about leads. Week 2, you're going to talk about cost, revenue, expenses. Week 3, you're going to talk about training and development. Week 4, you're going to talk about culture. If you go to the agents in your office in a sales meeting and you say, hey guys, I love everybody being here. We want to make sure that we're attracting the right type of agents here. I'd love to get our message out a little bit more. Would any of you be willing to talk for just a second on camera? Yes, I know how much everybody loves video. Would any of you guys be willing to talk for just a couple minutes on camera about how we help out with leads? Keep in mind, agents don't really want leads. Agents want closings. But you can talk to them from a lead standpoint. So you can say, hey guys, I know we convert better than everybody else, or I know that your listings sell faster than everybody else, or I know that you guys have other referral opportunities because of A, B, and C. Would any of you guys be willing to do a video? And if so, just talk for 15 seconds about how we work together to help impact your business from a lead standpoint. Now, I know some of you guys, leads are not important the same way that other ones are because of how you establish your business. So would anybody be willing to talk about cost, revenue, and expenses? And would anybody be willing to talk about the training and development we offer here? Would anybody be willing to talk about the culture here? You're going to have a room full of people, and most of them are going to be very ready, willing, and able to do at least 1 or 2 of those videos for you. And the next thing you know, you have about 20 videos that are short, 10, 15, 20, 30-second videos, very short, very to the point, of your agents talking about those different messages. Once you have that, once you've established that, once that's in place, now all you have to do is you have to start finding agents that matters to, which, believe it or not, is the easy part. Once your agents that are currently in your office support the message, and they're in those video testimonials, and they're having those conversations with the people that they're having the conversations with through co-op transactions, or like I said, book clubs and all the other things that you do, they're connecting with them. As they're connecting with them, now it's not you selling your company. Now it is you and your company's culture selling your brokerage. If all you're doing is selling independence, be very careful. It's hard to attract agents without buying them. If you're selling support, it's very exciting for people to be able to focus on that. So from a big picture standpoint, we want to make sure that we're staying very close to who supports the message, which are the agents in your office, and then how it's being relayed. Think back to that sales meeting for just a minute. Think back to your conversations with some of your agents as you're coaching them. When you talk to them about being protective of your culture in your sales meeting, you're going to say things like, hey guys, I love it whenever we bump into great agents in the marketplace that you're interested in them being part of our company. I absolutely love it. I think that's super exciting. What I want to make sure that everybody in here knows is that collectively, I'm paying attention to our culture. So when I come across someone, if you bump into an agent on a transaction that's absolutely a fantastic agent on that transaction, I'm going to make sure that I do my homework to protect us, because we're an awesome group of people. And I want to make sure that us being an awesome group of people, we stay that way. And the way that we're going to stay that way is if we're hyper focused on only hiring those right people. So whenever you refer someone to me, just know I'm going to vet them well. I'm going to make sure they fit into the office as well as they can, and I'm going to make sure that they're a great example of us in the marketplace. Now all of a sudden, all of your agents have pride in this. They're empowered to make sure they're taking care of your brokerage. Is everyone going to do that? No, but you're going to have some people that stand up, and if you have a way to emotionally and financially compensate them, more people will stand up. If you hand out, here an agent joined because so-and-so brought him up, and you hand out a referral check in a sales meeting and everybody gives that person a round of applause, man, that's absolutely going to go a long way. The applause is going to go farther than the money. Don't ever forget that. That recognition will go a super long way with them. So how you relay the message is going to make all the difference in the world of how comfortable everyone is from a big picture standpoint. So, so really quick, wrapping up here. There is, you see on your screen, you see some QR codes, okay? So, so you can click any of those QR codes. There's several different things there that are going to help you out with your business. If you're clicking on those and they are not working, just let me know. It should be fine. I checked them all out last night. Ben checked them out this morning. They should be working perfectly, but for whatever reason, if you're not getting them and can't download them, please put it in the chat. And we'll make sure that we email them. Let me add one more thing about agent attraction. So the agent I was talking about that said, I'm happy where I'm at, he joined. 2 of his team members joined. Within 12 months, I had three more people join, people that I had talked to in the past who were not interested in joining the office because they were happy where they were at, were not interested in joining the office, ended up joining the office. And in part, it was because I followed up with a conversation of, hey, so-and-so joined the office. I know that you guys worked at the same office together. And quite honestly, when I talked to him, he told me kind of the same thing that you said, that they were very happy where they're at. And I love that. And what I offered him was the chance to talk to you to see if there's any questions about us and about what I've promised and see if it would work for you. He was excited to talk to them because his decision was being validated that it was a good decision. The other people trusted that conversation more. I had to make one phone call to 3 different people, and all of those people ended up joining based on the pride that people had by joining the office, because I was able to get past that objection, and because I was able to focus on the piece of what was going on in their business that made a difference to them, which was their focus on growth and balance. So guys, we're gonna wrap up. If there's no questions, Ben, do we have any questions in the chat? So Ben said compensation plans. He said somebody asked about compensation plans. So compensation plans. Of course, we can't get a whole lot into that because of the you know, we're in a live webinar with brokers across the country. But from a big picture standpoint, compensation plans, you have to make sure that you have one that financially fits the goals of your company, but that also matches what's going on in your market. What I mean by that is you don't have to give away all of your money. It just has to match and be able to offset some of what other people are looking for in their market. When everyone is at a certain type of commission plan in your market, that is good news for you, because one size does not fit all when it comes to compensation plans. And there's a couple of different guides that we have. If you're interested in getting one of the guides on how to set your compensation plan up to make sure you maintain profitability, reach out to us and let us know. We'll get that to you. We'll get that to you as well. Ben, anything else? So, okay. Yep. All QR codes work. Ben said they're on track. So if you're having any issue with those, let us know. And in some way, shape, or form, we'll get that to you. As always, guys, you know, Ben normally says this. He's behind the camera today instead of sitting beside the camera. You know, he always asks me at the end of the podcast, which we would truly be grateful and appreciate, that if you found value in this today, you can do a couple of things. One, go like, share, and comment on brokerpreneurpodcast.com. You can go there and find all of our podcasts plus tons of information about how we help you out with your brokerage growth. You can also go to Spotify, Stitcher, Deezer, Alexa, anywhere that you can imagine that you can listen to podcasts, and we're on all of those. We're the #1 rated real estate recruiting podcast on so many of those platforms. We are, what Ben always asks me at the end of every podcast is, Matt, tell everybody why we do this. And so I got to say it in a different voice. I'll say it like Ben, Matt, why do we always do this? And then I always respond back with the same thing, which is true all of those times as well as now. Guys, we do all this. We just want to be part of your win.